The story for the Armageddon Factor is the key to time is almost complete. With only one piece still to find, the Doctor, Romana, and K9 arrive on Atrios, the planet in the middle of a terrible war with its twin world Zeus. To restore the balance of the universe for the White Guardian, the Doctor must find the sixth segment before the planets destroy each other. But Zeus is deserted, so who's behind the war? The final story for the season-long story arc of The Key to Time. And it is a satisfying conclusion. And you could tell right off the bat that while some of the other stories preceding this one had little trouble with budget, particularly the most recent one had a little trouble with budget, you can tell all that money that they saved from the lower budget the previous ones had went into this one, because the set of the Command Center on Atrios looked amazing. I mean, what a presentation of the symbol in the background, the little ramp in the middle with computers, the wheel-to-reel computer systems. It was just impressive, and they have a screen to look at. It was great. I was thoroughly impressed with that set. The costumes looked a lot nicer. The special effects were better. The model work in particular looked really, really good. Better than previous model work and previous stories, particularly from last series, if you remember from Underground. The kind of rocket ships looked good, but they kind of looked kind of stiff. This story had very good model work, and yes, they still looked kind of stiff, just floating around when they travel through space, but they still looked pretty dang impressive, and they actually had moving parts, which was cool. The actors were very well chosen. I mean, they really chose actors very, very well for this story. Particularly one that played the Marshal, he had this great tone of voice, he had this military attitude. It was just great. I loved it. Now, of course, to talk about casting, I have to talk about Lala Ward as the princess, and the princess was a great character. She was kind of a scream queen a couple times, but she seemed like a strong character on her own, and she actually, could defend herself at times. But she was a good character, and it was interesting because especially with her character, that the other key to times we've seen were either an object or just something random. And what was it? The power of Krull was actually Krull itself that was the key to time, because Krull had swallowed it. With this story, it's interesting. The key to time was an actual person, and the person had to actually sacrifice themselves to become the key to time. And that is a very interesting twist on the key to time, the piece to the key to time, but also their overall story, and also for the character that they were destined to sacrifice themselves so that they could turn into that piece, so that time could be made, so the balance of the universe could be restored. That is a deep, heavy subject and very surprising. And Lala Ward will have, further, adventures with Doctor Who, and I'll leave that for another season, but I know some people are probably wanting me to talk about that, but I'll leave that for the next story, the next season. Some of the other casting choices good too. Now, while I talk about the grand set of the Atrios, the remainder of the sets with the hallways, and particularly when we get to Zeus and then the Shadow's Lair, they do seem kind of cheap, just like random hallways and random cave corridors. They do feel kind of cheap, but you do have to admire what they could do with so little, and kind of give like the impression, like when we get to Zeus, you can see just the impression of how deserted the planet is, like how completely, utterly deserted it is, and that the only pristine room is where the computer is housed. And then when we get to the Shadow's Lair, we just get this sinister, dark vibe, because, black is the main color. In fact, the Shadow has like a skull top head and very gaunt features, like black, like he's supposed to be like blend into the background almost. So you kind of get the kind of like the impressions of the characters or the environment just from what they were able to do. Again, small amount of money for the sets say a lot. So that's, while yes, it looks cheap, it does have a story to tell. So, it can be forgiven. And also this story had, which is common with Doctor Who, is the themes that come along with it. This one very much seemed like a theme of anti-war, but in particular because of recent events, the Vietnam War in particular. That's what it kind of felt like. Felt like just two nations just warring at each other, just destroying each other, not for any real reason at all. you could substitute for any war, or just, you know, maybe the Cold War in particular, just, you know, two governments just throwing mud at each other and not really going anywhere. You can interpret that. There's a lot of themes in analyzing you could do with just the war between Zeos and Atreus, and particularly when you find out that the Zeos is a machine and somebody's manipulating behind them, you can, you know, again, interpret something further of like, you know, like either some, you know, people who hold real power with government, like billionaires or something, you know, they're probably just manipulating both sides to, you know, get further their own means. You can interpret it that way. There's a lot of analytical detail in this story to really look at too. Now, the end result with the whole story is actually quite satisfying. Yes, it was seemed kind of rushed at the end because they had to jam it in at the end, but it was a satisfying end, although kind of very tragic at the same time, because the whole season they've been collecting these keys of time, and when they discover that the White Guardian is actually the Black Guardian and wanting the key to time to control the whole universe, the Doctor, you know, destroys the scanner that they've been using to track all the keys, and all the pieces just separated and went to different various times and spaces and got lost in the universe again. And the one piece that the princess sacrificed herself for, she becomes whole again. She becomes a human again. And so there's a plus side to that, but it's just a whole tragedy. It was like, we get all these pieces, we fought tooth and nail to get it, and then just like that, they're all gone again. It's like, oh, what, you know, you could think of, what could they have done with that? You know, just the key to time, like, Doctor could have probably like saved it somewhere, because he probably could have felt like, you know what, nobody deserves this power. He probably put it like somewhere in deep in the TARDIS where nobody could find it. Although yes, it probably is best that it's smashed so that nobody can get it. You know, they would have to find it as well, which they probably have no means to do so, so therefore it's forever secure. But at the same time, it's like, oh, we went through all that just for it to be, you know, to be lost again. But it's a good moral to the story too. He's like, you know, again, nobody should have this type of power, so nobody should have it, not even the Doctor. So, but my favorite part of this whole episode was, this whole story was to solve a problem, because when the Atreus was going to come and destroy Zeos, they didn't know that it was a machine and the war was really over. But the thing is, the machine was going to self-destruct and destroy both Zeos and Atreus in the wake. So they couldn't disarm it, so they had to create a fake piece, a fake piece for the final piece of the key to time, and place it in there and create a time loop. And that was my favorite part, because it was like, whoa, that is a really neat idea to do, to create a time loop to stop destruction. And it just kept going over and over and over and over again. But they really were isolated to just the ship that was coming to attack, and the control panel and the machine itself, so that, you know, the whole universe doesn't get affected. But I thought that was a really neat idea, very scientific, you know, Time Lord stuff as well, and time, and just like a really neat thing. And also kind of remind me of a third Doctor Who story. I forget the name of the story, but to kind of prevent aliens from wreaking havoc on Earth, John Pertwee's Doctor throws the villains in a separate universe, then run on a time loop over and over and over again for all of eternity, and then he got out. And it also kind of reminded me of the days of Vine, if anybody remembers the app Vine, where you just make 7-second videos that just go over and over and over again, because Vine videos were basically a time loop if you think about it. So not only was it a great idea, but it reminded me of previous Doctor Who stories, but also just modern day life as well. This is also, unfortunately, the last story with Mary Tam, I believe her name is. Yes, Mary Tam as Romana. And which kind of is sad, because her incarnation of Romana was a great, not only foil to the Doctor, but also showing progress for female characters and also companions in Doctor Who. Because, especially not only was she a Time Lord, but also a woman, but also she had equal level with the Doctor. And she, I love their bickering. They would have these great little bickering moments and trying to one-up each other all the time. Or sometimes even make fun of each other. It was great. And I just love their relationship so much. It was like, you could see the Doctor kind of you know, not necessarily forgiving the Time Lords for past indecencies, but kind of bonding over his race once again, and particularly someone to share with, and seeing, and she actually agreeing with the Doctor, you know, maybe secretly, because she doesn't full out say, you know what, the Doctor, you're right about this or that with the Time Lords. She just, you could kind of get the impression just from her being around him that she's learning from him, and she kind of becomes a better person for it. And he learns from her as well, because like I said, he's kind of bonding with her and kind of like, you know, being a little bit more lenient with the Time Lords in a way. But yeah, they had this with, particularly with Sarah Jane Smith, there was, you know, women characters in Doctor Who have been getting better and better and actually becoming more equal with Doctor. And with this one in particular, after Sarah Jane and previous female ones, the fact that she's both a Time Lord and a woman, and she has equal footing with the Doctor, says a lot. And the fact that she can hold her own. Yes, she did many times, as many other female companions did before, get into, you know, entrapment and become little scream queens, but she still was able to hold her own. She just went back, like the previous companions went back and forth between being a scream queen but also a strong female type, and sometimes in the same episodes they'd be scream queens one moment and then the next be able to defend themselves because they see an opportunity and take it. So it's like a little bit of progress with Doctor Who over the years, and it's just sad because Mary Tan was so great in that role, and I understand why she left the role, because it's like you take the character so far and then it just kind of stays that way, and she's kind of like, you know what, we can't take this character any further, I'm just gonna opt out, which I can understand. But at the same time, it's like, oh man, you have this great relationship going, everything's perfect, oh, why would you want to leave? But you know what, sometimes you have to know when to leave. I mean, that's the same thing with the Doctors. Each actors play the Doctor. At one point had to go, you know what, it's time to go, it's time for me to hang my hat, or in the Doctor's case a scarf, and do something else. And that was what she did too, and it sucks, but times change. And then Lalla Ward, who played the princess in this story, plays the second incarnation of Romana in the next story, which I will get to in the next story. But overall, this is an exciting story, very fun. It has some flaws, but not glaring flaws, just some you can just, you know, just forgive and ignore and tolerate. But it was an overall good story and a very, very good climactic end to the entire season-long story of The Key to Time. And I have all the stories here with me. All 6 stories. We've got the Ribios Operation, the Pirate Planet, the Stones of Blood, the Androids of Tara, the Power of Kroll, and the Armageddon Factor. Now, this entire season-long story, while each one is their own individual story and are great in their own individual right, the entire arc of trying to find these pieces and what they were meant for and all of this was a really neat idea. It was cool to have just a season-long story arc, not just individual stories just pieced together, and then, you know, we have great adventures of Doctor season, and then, you know, repeat the same thing over and over again. It was great to have a break from that, just like, okay, we'll still do individual stories, but the entire season they're looking for one thing, and we both know how it starts and ends. You writers just go off and do this, but they have to find the piece, and then blah 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 blah. It was great to have something different, and it kind of refreshed the series a little bit, particularly for fans like me who are watching it from the beginning, kind of just like, okay, everything's repeating, but it's like the stories are still fresh, they're still good, okay, cool, cool, cool. The Doctor changes, cool, cool, cool. And then it's like, wow, we got an entire season, it's just one story. Yes, they're individual stories. It's kind of like chapters in a one big book, basically. And they're all just one long story. And that was neat. That was impressive. I wish they could do something similar with future series, and I think they do again with the, I'm remembering correctly, the 6th Doctor. I think they do one more season-long story arc, but I'm not 100% on that, but we'll see. I would like to see more of that in classic Doctor Who, and even in future Doctor Who stories with the current Doctors. But yes, now the Armageddon Factor, I give 3.5 stars out of 5. The entire season-long story arc of The Key to Time, I have to say I give an impressive 3 stars out of, no, not 3 stars. That doesn't seem to quite right. You know what? I'm giving it 4 stars. The entire season-long story arc with the Key to Time, I give 4 stars. It was very impressive. The entire season arc was impressive, fun, exciting, refreshing, had a good plot, and a satisfying ending. Although the ending, yes, was a little short and rushed, it was very satisfying nonetheless. The story of the Armageddon Factor itself is fun, enjoyable, entertaining, very thrilling, a lot of twists, turns, betrayals, revelations, and oh man, just some good visual effects, special effects, sets, even dialogue at times. There's a lot of good stuff going on in this story. So yes, everything with the Key to Time is very much worth seeing. And I don't want to ramble on any further, so I will end this here. And the next time we meet, I will probably be reviewing Season 17, Series 17 of Doctor Who, where we once again meet the Daleks and the new incarnation of Romana, which fans have dubbed Romana 2. Thank you for watching, and have a lovely night. Bye.